Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a great day. Certainly, I hope that if you are on the East Coast of the United States, specifically, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, you are safe, dry, hunkering down somewhere else, and hopefully this hurricane doesn't have you in too bad of a spot. And yeah, so again, everyone out there, be safe and welcome into the Computer America Show, where today on the program we have, if you haven't checked the show notes, we have the one, the only Ralph Bond, and he will be joining us here in just a moment to talk all things, science, tech, some very interesting stories, including everything from exoskeletons, 3D printed buildings. I believe there's a tattoo for a plant, so you can, kind of see where your produce has been in their 20s, and all that and more here on Computer America. Now, before we get started, a couple of things that we should definitely mention, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from the show notes, which will have a link to Ralph's website, to a link to the cheat notes, which will have everything that we discussed today, and then probably some more extra. And you definitely want to follow along with those. And also while you're there, check out the live video portion, which is also found at twitch.tv/Computer America. And the last thing is the social media contest, which has currently ended. We are working with Logitech to kind of get that rebooted with a new prize. But I will certainly let you know as soon as that is up and going once again. Now, all that being said, why don't we go ahead, just bring on our guest, and he is waiting patiently in the wings. And if you have if you're checking out the video portion, you can definitely see Ralph right there, smiling, waving, saluting, and happy that he could join us. So everyone, Ralph Bond, longtime Computer America correspondent, worked with Intel for a period. That's where we first met him. Worked for Autodesk for an even longer period, and now he is retired and busier than ever, as he said, doing freelance work, podcast producing, and more. Ralph, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and once again, our hearts and hopes go out to everybody on the East Coast impacted by Florence. And oh my goodness, hang on there, folks. And Ben, I'm so glad to hear you're currently out of harm's way, being to the west of all of that mess.
Right, yeah, and it's kind of strange because obviously we're from Florida, and we've had our share of hurricanes, and like everywhere, because all my friends are in Florida, and they're like, "Are you okay with the hurricane?" And Florida is only, I haven't, kind of measured it lately, but about 120 miles wide at any given point, just a couple of hours and you're from coast to coast. So when a hurricane impacts, it impacts the entire state, coast to coast. The hurricanes are so massive, they can do that. Here in North Carolina, we are so far west, like we're almost Tennessee, that the hurricane's hitting the coast, but we are still like 2 days from actually getting hit by anything. And it's a very, kind of strange hurricane experience. But it's, even though we are out of harm's way, a lot of people weren't. And man, living on the coast, it has its perks. You get the beach, but you also get the beach even when you don't want it. And
there you go. Yeah. And in fact, in today's setup of stories, by the way, later on in the set of stories, if we get to them, there's a story about the impact of rising sea levels, which is kind of related to the flooding and so forth going on in the North and South Carolina and so forth today. And its impact on our internet infrastructure, fiber optics, all the cabling, everything that's underground and so forth, and its potential deleterious impacts. So that's kind of relates to what's going on with the horrible weather right now.
Well, yeah, and it's all about future-proofing or currently proofing your utilities, and where the infrastructure for the internet really, you kind of look back at the phone lines, and those were erected back in the I don't know when the first phone line was put up, but in the 1900s, somewhere around there, and the internet just kind of followed suit. So they're definitely not future proofed. They're definitely not hurricane, flood, water
Right.
resistant, whatever. And hey, it's time to take a look at that, and
Yeah.
time to take a look at the rest of the stories that you've collected. So,
Yeah.
Ralph, one more time, let the folks know who you are and talk about the show notes. What do you collect when you come on the show here?
Yeah, so what I do, for the show, I love science and technology trends, and so that's my title is the Science and Technology Trends Correspondent for the show. I go out and I look for headlines and stories from a wide variety of publications that are germane to that area, and stories that I think a lot of times aren't picked up by the mass mainstream media, but are compelling and interesting, and I put them together in what Ben calls the show notes. The show notes, again, folks, come out to the show Computer America website, get the show notes, because it'll give you all the information, links, pictures, and I'm going to be reading the articles from the collection I put together. But also, as Ben knows and I know, we never get through all the 10 stories that I put together each month, but that's okay because it's a fun reading assignment for you to have in your pocket. You can pursue it later. So get those show notes and away we go.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. And hey, where better start than the first one? Now, this is a story that we picked up, but we, because after we do our interviews, sometimes we have time left over, to which we dedicate to computer and technology news. And this is one that we picked up, but we didn't get to. So I'm glad that you did pick it up, because it caught my eye, but I wasn't able to actually discuss it on the show. So please, story number one.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. So the headline for this one is LG, the company, LG unveiling wearable robot at the IFA Berlin show that just ended ended the very early part of this month. I think the 5th of September. The story will give us the dates. And I had to find out, what does IFA stand for?
I'm ready for this.
I'm going to I'm sure I'm going to ruin it. German speakers, please forgive me in advance, but it's International Funkastellung. And I looked up Funkastellung, and it means radio. So it was radio show. So I think in the 30s, late 30s or something like that, they started this show, and it was for radio enthusiasts, electronic radio, of course. And it grew over the years to become this massive kind of huge electronics and technology show that happens in Berlin. And so this story comes from that time period. It was a press release and story resulting from that show. So this comes from the International Business Times. I picked it up through the MSN news feed, and it's a story by Corzano Victorino. And again, LG unveiling wearable robot at IFA 2018. Now, if you have the show notes, you have a link to the original story. You have a picture here showing this kind of interesting, I call it augmented human device. And I want to time out just for a second before I start reading the story and drag out Ralph's old soapbox. You've heard it before, Ben, many times. I firmly believe that the greatest future for robots might not be the ones that look and dance and walk and talk and whatever like a human being, but the idea of technologies associated with robotics being applied to augment human beings, exoskeletons like this story and so forth. I kind of think, and I can certainly see robots like in hospitals that are going around dispensing medications, little guys that are rolling around on the little treads or whatever they do. But I'm not saying never. Of course, never say never when it comes to technology about human-like moving around, android-y-like characters that might fool you even thinking they're human beings, like Westworld or something like that. Maybe, but I really think the excitement is augmenting our own bodies.
Well, and really, I think that that's obviously a stopgap measure, because the hardest part to recreate, and we are hearing a lot about artificial intelligence, machine learning.
Right.
Just had a whole segment yesterday about how they're using it for cybersecurity purposes. But recreating a robot that can walk and talk and lift things, or at least do the physical things, is one thing. But we are so far away from recreating a human brain that to try to recreate something technology-wise that can even rival what a thinking intuitive person can do, that's the part that we can't do, that we're not anywhere close. So that's why we see this article that you have here. And by the way, I will say, and this is I don't know why I went on this tangent, but I had to go look up a Funk Astalung, or however you say it.
Funkastellung.
And by the way, and I had to look up the word because Germans, just the German language, they have this thing where if they don't have a direct word for something, they cram words together.
They choo-choo train them.
Yeah, and that's why you get these words, these German words that are 200 characters long that really just tell an entire story. And by the way, the Ausstellung part of the Funk Ausstellung, the Ausstellung means exhibition, and Funk, I guess, means radio. So
interesting.
It's radio.
Well, maybe
exhibition.
they were into funk music. They were into funk music way ahead of their time, right?
Maybe.
Terrible.
But you're right. So that's a tangent. But getting back to this one, and I also like the fact that before it was like these scientists and these medical professionals that were building these exoskeletons. Yeah. But LG, that's a big name company working with robotics. Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah. That's an excellent point, and we'll get into the story in just a second. That's a really good point I want to amplify on, is that a lot of this exoskeleton work and robotics has been esoteric, very far-reaching people doing this work, but not for a wider stream distribution, let's say. So having a company like LG or Sony, of course, has been a big pioneer in this area as well. But let's get into the story. Here we go. LG Electronics has revealed that it's going to introduce its first wearable robot at IFA 2018 in Berlin. And this was again held very late August, early September, recent show. The product is the product is described to be human-centric, and it is expected to join all of the previously announced service robots by the South Korean technology company. So that's that human-centric, meaning a hybrid, right? Robotics technology combined with an actual human being, which again, I think is where the future is. LG's wearable robot is called, and I'm just going to call it Chloe Suitbot. It's capital C, capital L, capital O, lowercase I, and then Suitbot run together as one word. So just for the sake of ease, I'll call it Chloe Suitbot, okay? Because it is wearable. It is not something that can walk and navigate around spaces by itself. That's what we traditionally think of as a quote-unquote robot, right? Instead, it will only work when a person is wearing it. Now, what the Chloe Suitbot does is provide support as well as enhance the user's legs for better mobility and enhance lower limb strength. Now, if you have the show notes, folks, if you do, and better go get them, you see the picture of the fella wearing the exoskeleton lower body leg augmentation. I'm assuming, given it's a warehouse kind of picture, that's to help him or her lift heavier things with their legs than they might ordinarily be without that assistance, right? So that's the idea behind this particular product.
And I'm actually going to kind of jump in here because just looking at the picture, I'm going to contradict that a little bit. And I've seen something like this to a smaller extent used by Boeing, but the picture that they're showing there doesn't actually come up around their arms. It's just simply their legs, and it's to kind of do that thing. But I will say that one thing it might do, which I saw again at Boeing, was they have workers who kind of run around all the time and are doing things. Yeah. Robotic legs like these, they can support the weight of a person, so you can kind of sit down while you're kind of standing up, and it can let people kind of walk around or do tasks like this for longer because they can kind of rest whenever they want, between tasks.
Exactly. And they can get into positions, to your point, that would be very, very difficult to sustain without this assistance. And by the way, our U.S. Navy, they've been working with exoskeletons for underwater cleaning of ship hulls and so forth. It's amazing. That's been going on for several years. Just design
a Roomba, just have a Roomba that would just stick to the boat and just
ship Roomba.
Yeah.
Anyway, going on with the story, LG's Chloe Suitbot is designed to be worn over a pair of pants. It fits comfortably because it's sandal-type shoes, and I like this, and automatic adjustment feature ensure that the wearer can easily get in and out of it. Meanwhile, its naturally rotating joints enable the wearer to move in a more relaxed and natural way while walking, standing, or working. Pretty cool. LG developed the machine in collaboration with SG Robotics, a startup that's been studying how wearable robots can improve the quality of life. Since last year, LG has been very interested in developing robots that can help humans overcome the limitations of their bodies in everyday life. And of course, ding, 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 for mobility impaired people, disabled people, people with medical conditions, and so forth. All of this technology has great potential future application as well.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point earlier, Ben, getting a major consumer electronics company like LG involved with this, I think, is a really positive step forward. Go on with the story here. The Chloe SuitBot is the 8th product to join LG's robot portfolio. The company is confident that the device will be useful in medical and industrial settings due to the fact that it compensates for humans' limited muscle strength in various situations, the Korea Herald newspaper reports. So far, LG's robot platform is composed of cleaning robots, lawn mowing robots, yes, please sign me up for that, household robots, food service robots, shopping robots, porter robots, and robots that guide people. The introduction of the Chloe SuitBot at IFA 2018, which runs from August 31 through September 5, so there you go, will expand the platform to include lower body strength enhancing robots. And kind of wrap the story up here, it says, LG saw to it that its new robot will have a means to communicate with its other robots. This part's cool, right? The Chloe SuitBot has a feature that lets it connect to LG's service robots so they could form a smart working network that shares information and tools needed at working areas for manufacturing, logistics, distribution, and the like. And there's a quote from the company president, which you can go and read in the show notes. I won't take time to do that. But I just think that bit about adding the connectivity factor to this, Ben, is another really compelling part of this whole story that you could have stitched together, not only like devices being worn by workers, but interacting, as the picture shows, with one of these autonomous little roll-around type robots. So that's kind of cool, the networking concept.
These robots, and this is, much like a lot of other promises of other technology we have on the show here, including, things like self-driving cars. They, they're not just going to talk with the user. They're going to talk with each other. They're going to learn. And, obviously, like, let's, again, kind of take the cars, for instance. One car driving 1 million miles, that's great, and it's going to learn a lot over the course of 1 million miles. But 1 million cars driving 1 mile is going to learn. It's going to have just as much data, let alone 1 million cars driving 1 million miles. And if they all share that at the same time, they're going to be much safer and they're going to learn much, much faster. I think that's what they're going for in the same way. And there's going to be a tipping point where, you said it a couple times there, where future application, there's going to be a tipping point where they become affordable enough and easy to use enough that it will only make sense to equip every worker with this, just so they can get the productivity that you kind of need from them. And, there's going to be a time, 5-10 years down the road where it's just like, kind of giving your workers a walkie-talkie in a warehouse, or giving your worker a laptop so that they can, do data entry. Hey, they're going to need an exoskeleton to actually be able to work for 8 hours a day. It's just going to be a thing, and it's coming.
Yeah, well, yeah. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about emergency responders and people like that. Jaws of life machines are great, but what if you could have arms of life, right? You have an exoskeleton that allows you, like Superman, to tear apart car doors with a single bound. That's something to think about. I'll tell you, I stress, talking about autonomous vehicles, that's nice. That's great. What I want is all the technology to help what's left of this, my brain, to be able to drive better. The idea of all this technology going in to make the car just drive by itself, that's lovely. But I guess I'm so old, I still just kind of hesitate with that turning over the keys literally completely to a computer. Augment me, help me with my vision, help me with my hearing, help me with my peripheral vision, help me self-brake, all that kind of stuff. Help me.
I guess that makes me young enough to be lazy enough and not want to drive whatsoever. That's I very, very different opinions there, but I appreciate that.
That's why I qualified it as a generational thing.
Absolutely. And but yeah, so all these different robotics, everything, they're going to talk to each other, and not only that, but they're going to learn from each other. So hopefully, they have little sensors that you like if you start to crouch down, the robot isn't going to resist you at all. In fact, it will help you make the movement that you're trying to go for. It's very, very sensitive in that it will know that, hey, I'm trying to stand up. Let's put a little bit of power to help this person stand up straight. And hopefully after, so many thousands of use cases, it won't randomly decide that you want to do a split. It's just going to it's just going to help you do what you need, and it's going to learn to do it very quickly. Now, story number 2, very, very similar, I will say. Not from LG, can't give them all the credit, but this is one that actually, I take that back. I thought it was literally robotic arms that, that would replace people's, who are maybe missing a limb or something like that, which, could be a case. But this is more like Doc Ock from Spider-Man. This is science. This is science fiction.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So this one, the headline is, "These wearable robotic arms and head let 2 people share one body." That's a freaky title, and I couldn't resist that. And then it's from MSNBC, and it's a story by David Freeman. And friends, this is where you really want the show notes, because it has links to some really fun videos to watch. And Ben, I don't know if you're able to play one of the videos now as we speak. We're going to go for it. Got it going? Great, because this is really, really fun. And like you say, the what was the name of the character that from Spider-Man?
Doc Ock or Dr. Octopus.
Yes, he had all those, tentacle things.
Yeah, and that was the thing, was that they, and that was the whole point of the original, Spider-Man movie, was that they kind of had a mind of their own. They weren't just simply, they weren't just simply an extension of his arms. They were, kind of doing their own thing, which I think is very similar.
They were symbiotic, like extreme AI pilot fish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's the story. Researchers in Japan have developed a telepresence system that lets one person remotely control a set of robotic arms attached to a backpack worn by another person. So there's a lot going on here. That's why I love this story. Effectively allowing 2 people to work together on complex tasks without being in the same place. Wow. Developed at the, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Keio University and the University of Tokyo, the prototype system consists of a set of human-like robotic arms and a robotic head, in quotes, equipped with stereo vision and microphones, all attached to a backpack which contains control circuitry and a battery. Now, real-time data from the robotic head is beamed to a virtual reality headset worn by the other person, who could be, thousands of miles away, right? Who manipulates handheld controllers to operate the robotic arms of the other person who's wearing this getup, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then here's a quote. "Thus, the user can feel as being fused with the surrogate body, and therefore both can share their actions," MHD Yaman Saraji, an assistant professor at Keio University and one of the researchers who developed the system, told NBC News Mock in an email. Now, it goes on to say the fusion system, so think about this, telepresence, remote locations, controlling of a augmented exoskeleton-like thing. It's just it fires on a lot of really interesting cylinders.
I don't say this often, Ralph, but after watching the video, and we watched it in its entirety, this one is damn creepy. It's
creepy.
I know. I don't say this a lot about a lot of your stories, but just the way that they're trying to implement it to begin with, I'm sure it has a long way to go, but it's a very creepy invention that they've done here.
It's creepy cool, I think.
It is.
Hey, think about time out for a second here. We'll get back to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Think about being able to have an expert surgeon guide a person through a procedure or something. Or maybe you're on an emergency site and the EMT is wearing something like this. I mean, I'm kind of throwing it out there a little bit. But maybe.
The only thing I think about that is that we've had similar stories, and we actually currently have technology like that kind of puts one person into kind of quote unquote the position of of actually being there. That's just kind of projecting your presence somewhere. The part that makes it creepy to me is that you're essentially strapping someone onto your back and letting them kind of coexist in your same space. That's the part that's very confusing. I don't know if that involves, maybe some kind of construction work where like a person has to in like a very confined space, someone has to like hold something while another person, uses a tool to drill something. Like it's it's adding that element onto a person. I think that makes this a little weird for me.
And to show you how it's Friday and I'm in a silly mood, I immediately started thinking about when we were kids in grade school. And, you would grab your friend's arm or hands or something and make them slap themselves,
Oh,
right?
of course.
Why are you hitting yourself? What are you doing? And I can see somebody taking advantage of this kind of a system to do something telepresence-wise. Stupid, silly.
It's possible, yeah.
But I digress. Okay, back to the story. The Fusion system presented last month, which meaning August, at the Computer Graphics Conference in Vancouver, Canada, allows an expert in one location to guide someone in another. For example, showing how to assemble something or giving instruction in an operation of tools or instruments. The robotic hands can be removed. That's interesting. There's more creepiness. The robotic hands can be removed and the robotic wrists temporarily fixed to the surrogate's own wrists to give the user complete control. An arrangement that could be used to teach someone to play a musical instrument, for example.
I read that sentence, and it's like, to teach someone to play a musical instrument. I was like, to teach them a musical instrument or a lesson, and just just slap them with their own hand. But
the grade school slap yourself.
That's but that's what we saw in the video, was that it was kind of like a Velcro kind of wrist strap, and they would have control of your wrists, and then you would still have the control of your hands and fingers. That's for all you radio listeners.
Oh, yeah. And here's a quote from one of the professors involved. Says, quote, "There's also potential applications in assistive, I hope I said that right, robots, for example, by providing extra support or coordination to someone with a motor impairment like weakness or a tremor." Henry Admoni, an assistant professor at Carnegie Mellon University Robotics Institute, told Mock in an email. Continues on with a quote, "The potentially proactive aspect of this robot," she added, "is that it's designed to also allow a remote operator to physically guide the wearer," which is kind of repeat of what the story was already saying. And then to kind of wrap things up here, it says, "This isn't the first supplemental arm system that has been developed." So truth and lending statement here by the author. In 2014, researchers at the Georgia Institute of Technology demonstrated a wearable third arm that could play the drums. And last year, researchers at Cornell University unveiled a third arm that could assist with a variety of tasks. But unlike the Fusion Systems arms, these other arms weren't designed to be controlled by a remote user, hence the telepresence part of this story, right? Saraji said the researchers hope to create a commercial version of the Fusion system once more developed and testing has been completed. But given the complexities, Admoni said she would be surprised if it became a commercial technology anytime soon. So take this in the grain of future trend, future kind of look into the next several years, perhaps down the road kind of thing. But I just love the telepresence combined with the robotics and the fusion of two people into one system, collaborating, blah, blah, blah. I just thought there was a lot of fun things going on with this story.
It may just be where I'm currently at in life, but we have a couple family members going through physical therapy, and we have to, we have luckily medical staff that come to the house and help, kind of do stretches and poses and strength training, that kind of thing. And I was thinking, other than the fact that this thing looks like you have to kind of support it as like a backpack, if you could kind of eliminate that, either like a full body exoskeleton, if you could guide someone through exercises, or you could guide them through stretching or other kind of therapy remotely, I mean, it seems like there are, as always, medicine and technology mix very well. Like they said,
Agree.
I don't see this, kind of being a thing anytime soon, but there is potential for it, which I like.
Yeah. So definitely in the kind of futuristic, trendy category for this story.
Absolutely, and again, I'm sticking by it. Creepy. It's there's no other word I like to put to it. So Ralph, I will say that we're about 30 seconds from heading off into break. We are 2 stories in, 30 minutes into the show. We are flying. We are blazing through these things.
Yeah, right.
But I will say, maybe to give us a little bit of pep, we are going to come back to story number 3, where IBM has invented a drone. And hey, this is something we all probably need all the time, a cup of coffee. how these things relate, more, and Ralph Bond here on Computer America when we come right back. Everyone, the music means commercials, then more show. And by the way, if you missed any part of today's show, check us out, computeramerica.com/podcast, and you can find the whole show there. Everyone, we'll be right back. Here we go.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. Ralph is waving. We are back and we are happy to be here. And everyone, again, I hope you're safe from the hurricane and you are ready to head into a lovely weekend. Hopefully a very, very good weekend. But before we do, we have, another half hour of Ralph Bond joining us. And we're doing all these different stories. So as Ralph said at the beginning, there's probably going to be some leftovers that if you, and trust me, none of these are bad. If we say that we skip them, it's for any number of reasons from time to, just any kind of other constraints. None of these are boring. None of these are uninteresting. It's just simply, hey, we're trying to make a good radio show. Now, story number 3, though, as we were saying before the break, drones, they're trendy. They're not as trendy as they were maybe a year ago, but we're still finding out applications. I still recall vividly the day that I heard about the burrito drone, where a company had like a little PVC sleeve that they had, and they were using a drone. They'd stuff the burrito into the PVC sleeve, and then they would drop it in a park because they weren't technically allowed to fly it there. But either way, they were dropping burritos on people, and people loved it. Now, a burrito you put inside a sleeve, it's pretty compact. It really isn't that shock. There's really not that much of a shock problem. Right. Coffee, though, coffee's a liquid. It spills easily. It's very easy to lose in the transportation. Talk about this and talk about what IBM has also added to it.
Well, yeah, and that's part of the reason I grabbed this story. And later in the story, you'll see the folks raising those reality issues about a hot liquid being transported by a drone. But anyway, the story comes from USA Today, a story by Zalati Mayer, and the headline is IBM has invented, IBM has invented coffee drones, and they predict when you need a cup. Wow. Okay, that's pretty interesting.
I like how they even had to file a patent and draw figures and show how a coffee drone would work.
Yeah, it's really comical. Again, if you have the show notes, you know exactly what we're talking about. So here's the story. It says the barista handing you a cup of coffee might one day be a drone. IBM has secured a patent for a coffee drone that not only flies around public spaces to deliver cups of brew, but also predicts which people need caffeine pick-me-ups. Okay, I can almost wonder if this is like an April Fool's Day story or something, because it just seems a little way out there, especially for IBM. But anyway, according to paperwork filed with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, the device could be used in an office, cafe, or event setting where a pre-ordered cup of joe would be delivered to the drinker or where a thirsty individual would flag it down. Facial or voice recognition software, an electronic ID tag, or Bluetooth from a person's smartphone ensures the coffee gets to the right person. Plus, the drone could proactively deliver the Java, the Armuck, New York-based company's application explained. In other words, it could proactively deliver this. That's the added value.
Yeah,
to this.
and I think that's really the interesting part. It's not just that a drone is delivering things to, as I said, other, even food companies have kind of promised the same thing, but it's the idea that it can look at you and say, "You look tired. Here's a coffee." And that's also a very, futuristic kind of thing. It's, robots identifying you need something before you need it. That's that whole new level of convenience.
Yes, exactly. So you're right on target. This is what really does make this interesting. So it goes on to say the drone would assess someone's recent sleep quality via a Fitbit or similar tracking device, electronic calendars such as the time of day the event is held, the type of meeting it is, and who's attending, biometrics, blood pressure, pupil dilation, facial expressions, and wake-up time. All these factors could potentially be analyzed to help the drone determine that Ralph really needs a cup of coffee. He is dragging in this boring meeting that's going on right now. The drone could cross-reference medications that interact with caffeine and know whom not to serve if granted access to the coffee lover's medical information. Now, this is really starting to get kind of freaky and out there, right? IBM's patent form also envisions applications for bars, where the drone can determine whether a person has drunk too much alcohol by looking for sleepiness, like the head angled downward or drooping eyelids, unsteadiness, or slurred speech cues.
It's that old saying. It's like, Ben, you've had too much. It's like, I'll tell you when I've had too much, and then the drone comes and tells you you've had too much, and you just kind of accept it.
And the drone bouncer, right?
Right.
So it goes on to say, if any are noted, the drone wouldn't bring any more drinks and would ignore the individual if he or she tries to flag it down. The drone also would determine if any booze was headed to a child and not serve the minor. That's a neat trick, because you might have people of very diminutive stature who might be misunderstood by the drone as a child. That could be interesting. To be clear, they aren't as small as mini drones people love to fly around in airspace. Right. And don't expect a coffee drone buzzing around to bring you your daily buzz anytime soon, though. Here's a quote. IBM encourages our researchers to pursue their interests, even though not all of their inventions become commercial products, spokeswoman Amanda Carl said in an email. By publishing their inventions as patents, we give our researchers the recognition they deserve to make their work public so it can inspire new innovation. So I think kind of what that quote is saying, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but its motivation is to encourage out-of-box thinking, right? And then here, to Ryan Kalo, a University of Washington School of Law drone expert, the coffee drone proposal is trying to do too much. Quote from this fella, it's a combination of technology that is ready for prime time and technology that clearly is not ready for prime time, he said. It's a drone that flies coffee around. It's going to be hard cross-referencing all these factors. Why not use a land-based cart? So, those robotic cart things that we see even in hospitals, for example. The answer is simple. People love food with theatrics. Think conveyor belt sushi restaurants in Japan, flambe dishes and burger joints, and frozen yogurt shops that use robots to prepare or serve food. It's how this coffee is served that has Colin Newell, a coffee industry expert based in Canada, raising concerns about safety. Quote, the fundamental flaw here is transporting hot liquids through the air. There's your key. He said it's a shtick as much as Amazon saying it'll deliver parcels to your home by drone. I don't know about that last comment so much, but I immediately think of the famous lawsuits people had against McDonald's. Remember a few years back, someone spilled a super scalding hot coffee on their lap in their car, and they went after McDonald's, and I think they won their case.
They did.
I think it is something that's a little tongue-in-cheek, but I thought it was such a funny concept. Think of Starbucks. Although it would be nice not to have to wait in a long line at Starbucks and just sit down and I think you need a Frappuccino, Ralph. Your eyes are kind of dilated. You're a little bit out of it here.
And they also mentioned at event-like places. So I would assume let's say you are at a large outdoor concert. And I'm not sure if I haven't been to one in years, but I remember that when you wanted to go to get a new drink, that was a whole ordeal. Probably you grabbed one of your friends, you had to push your way through the crowds, you had to go up there, pay for it. If you could have just an app and just say, I'd like to order another beer or whatever, and it would just fly it out to you wherever you are, using your phone to identify you. I would think
a classic case of that, Ben, would be a sporting event like a NFL football game. You're in a gigantic stadium like the Viking Stadium, for example. If you could have networked, intercontrolled, networked drones, and the drone knows exactly what seat you're in, and it swoops down to deliver you that beer instead of having to get up, leave the game, stand in some horrendous line. The beer might be a $20 beer about this big, but nonetheless, to your point, I think something like that could make sense, but I'm not sure about a scalding hot drink. Beer falls on somebody,
Yeah. Finally, maybe have something that we don't have people at baseball games throwing hot dogs at us. Instead, we have them gently placed in our hands by a drone. But one more point about this that kind of raised questions. Before we move on to the next story, this is clearly from the imagination of someone who knows the available technology, knows where things are heading, and try to combine them all. One thing that they kind of said here was that it would combine with people's medical information. It would kind of combine with other kind of data, and it seems like this kind of application sounds like it should be a very hands-off kind of application. Like I said, order a hot dog, and the drone flies a hot dog to you. That's simple. By kind of saying we need your personal data so that we can provide you a better service, I'm very unwary about that. I feel like that's just data that's unnecessary for the task that they're trying to do. So again, like I said, it's probably not something that will ever come out. It's just a patent, but it was going in a lot of directions. I can see how it really caught your eye.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now story number 4. This is one that we, kind of alluded to earlier, where rising sea levels, it's not something controversial. Don't worry, folks. It's just simply the state of things that ocean levels are rising. And with that, you have classic infrastructure that used to be safe from water and damage and weather and other such elements. And now we have to live in reality where, if you've been to Miami, I think it's like a multi-billion-dollar project, like a lot of billions of dollars of projects to build new levees, to worry about flood, flood resisting, things like that. So part of that, of course, comes down to the internet. So talk about this, because internet lines running underwater, we have internet lines running from the United States to Europe. I mean, we have lines that are submerged already. Why is this a problem all of a sudden?
Yeah. Well, it's a whole host of reasons. This is such an interesting story. And this publication online outlet is very interesting too. It's a Route, you take your pick, Route 50. And I got to know these folks when I was with Autodesk and working for the architectural engineering and construction division of our 3D software family of products. And this is one of these publications that really gets into infrastructure issues and so forth. So if you're not familiar with these guys, very, very interesting bunch of folks. The headline is thousands of miles of internet cables could be underwater by 2033. The story's by Kate Elizabeth Quirham. And again, in route50.com, if you have the show notes, you've got the link, you've got this really kind of cool image with its caption and so forth. It's rather self-explanatory. But let's get into the story here, because I think it kind of relates to what's happening with Florence and all the things that either through hurricanes, through storms, inundating and dealing with infrastructure like submerged internet lines and that sort of thing, or simply the rising sea levels. So here it goes. Thousands of miles of fiber optic cables in coastal communities may be underwater within 15 years due to rising sea levels, threatening internet access for millions of people, according to a study by researchers at the University of Wisconsin and the University of Oregon.
We're going to completely, I guess for this particular study, ignore the fact that millions of miles of line of internet cable and also the houses that they're connected to. But mostly we're going to focus on the cables.
Exactly right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. The study, titled Lights Out, Climate Change Risk to Internet Infrastructure, combines sea level rise projections from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration with data from Internet Atlas, a global map of the Internet's physical infrastructure. Researchers found that 4,067 miles of fiber conduit and 1,101 data centers and connection points will be surrounded by water in the next 15 years. Heavily populated coastal areas, including New York City, Seattle, and Miami, are most at risk, as are large-scale internet service providers, including AT&T, CenturyLink, and Intelliquent. And then it goes on to say, but the effects would not be limited to just those areas or providers that could potentially disrupt communications across the globe. Some damage could occur sooner than the 15-year threshold, according to study authors Paul Barford, Carol Barford, and Ramakrishnan Ariyajan.
Perfect.
God forgive me. Did it? I kind of sort of did it. Sorry about butchering your name, sir. Here's a quote. The results of our analysis show that climate change-related sea level incursions could have a devastating impact on internet communication infrastructure, even in the relatively short term, they wrote. Given the fact that most fiber conduit is underground, we expect the effects of sea level rise could be felt well before the 15-year horizon. Fiber optic cables buried underground are designed to withstand some degree of water and severe weather, but most are not waterproof and were not designed to be underwater permanently, the study says. That's a key point about this whole business. Is, again, they were never designed to be underwater permanently, and thus they're vulnerable. Goes on with another quote. Water, humidity, and ice have long been recognized as threats to cables and can cause various kinds of damage, including reduction in strength of signal, corrosion, and fiber breakage. Now, mitigation techniques exist, among them special coatings known as cladding and gels, but those only enable cables to function, quote, for decades under normal expected environmental conditions, close quote, the study says. Sea level rise exacerbated by climate change does not fit that profile, and much of the country's infrastructure is aging, which increases the risk of damage. Now, I know this is a long story, but I think it's so profoundly important. I wanted to invest the time. Another quote. The fact that a great deal of conduit infrastructure was developed over the past 20 years and is aging means that all seals and claddings are likely to be more vulnerable to damage, especially if they're underwater, the study notes. Researchers said their analysis should be considered conservative, quote, since it does not consider the threat of severe storms, close quote. Ding, ding, ding. There's our reference to today's sad events on the East Coast, right? That typically result in temporary storm surge and water levels higher than predicted average. And then it goes on to say, it references the mega storms like Katrina and Sandy and so forth. And then it closes with this little bit here. It also, quote, does not consider any efforts to harden or fortify communication infrastructure, since we argue that this will only be feasible in relatively small geographic areas, close quote. So I love this story because I thought it was so germane, and it coincidentally turned out to be doubly germane relative to water inundation caused by severe storms like Florence.
Right. It's one of those things that there's a lot of infrastructure that obviously needs worked on here in the United States, where you can look at the highways and crumbling bridges and that kind of thing, but also just the internet in general. I mean, like the town that I grew up in for the longest time had telephone poles and electricity poles running all over the place. The township right across the street, they decided that it was time. They were tired of picking up all the telephone poles after every hurricane. And so they built these large concrete kind of poles. They were giant concrete pillars. You've probably seen them in bigger towns, but they decided to invest in concrete. The town that I grew up in, because it was kind of more kind of self-sustaining or whatever, they decided, and they passed it by a vote, they're going to bury everything. They're going to put everything underground. Yeah. And I hope at least that they are, considering the impact of, rising sea levels and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of things that we need to just, 20 years doesn't sound like a long time, but in internet, in technology time, 20 years is ancient. I hope that if they do decide to refurbish, because I don't think you can stop sea levels from rising in 15 years, or, you can mitigate it, but you can't stop it. I hope that we come up with a solution that's at least forward thinking instead of just a Band-Aid or a patch that keeps us at the status quo. So
yeah, you're so right. Well, I think also too, as time goes on, advances in wireless high speed may help overcome this by simply going above ground.
And of course, this isn't a story, but have you been following the kind of 5G networks?
Somewhat, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And 5G, I mean, the promise of 5G, obviously, you have to hope that the throughputs are good enough that you don't have to pay by the gigabyte, but the speeds, you can get up to 10 gigabytes per second up and download if you are within range of a 5G tower. And I was thinking, like, I'm getting like 300 megabytes per second. If I had access to a wireless a wireless 10 gigabyte per second network that was just omnipresent, I feel like that would be a suitable replacement for a wired connection.
Yeah, it could be. So as I was reading this story, the one thing I thought of, well, gosh, one way to not necessarily solve this problem, but to work a workaround is to go above ground, go wireless. And who knows, we may see that come to pass. That reminds me too, thank goodness our cell phones and stuff rely on above ground things for the most part, because the old days when I was a little kid, everything was landline, telephone poles. Like say, a storm happens, telephone pole falls down, there goes the telephone. Right? Now with the cell phone, cell phone will be working even if we have, God forbid, a horrible earthquake or something, unless all the towers fall down.
I have not been keeping up to date with Facebook's, and we're going to do one more story before we finish here, but I will say that I don't know the status of Facebook's, kind of process. I think Elon Musk, of Tesla fame, has a project going, and I think Facebook has one as well, where they both want to implement, and each one has a different number of satellites, but they want to implement global Wi-Fi, so that anywhere you are, no matter what happens, you at least have it won't be as good as a dedicated line. It won't be as good as something much more local and direct, but even if it has like a high ping and it's kind of slow, if you have constant internet connection everywhere, that is something that I think a lot of people would be very comforted to knowing. And is that, separating yourself from the grid, there's camping and that kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. But if an emergency ever does happen, knowing that you can always pull out your phone and call someone, or pull out your phone and text someone, I think that's a future that we're heading to very soon as well. So.
Agree.
So, all right, there's that one. And Ralph, I'll let you, I don't know if any of these really caught your eye. There's a couple 3D printing, as we said. There's the plant tattoo. Did any of these stories really, kind of, and, the very, very accurate clock, any of these that you really want to fit in here before we end it?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of great stories in the package today. And again, folks, go out and get the show notes and read the ones that we're not going to cover. But I think I would like to do story number 5, because I thought it was kind of interesting. Sure. It's about our Marine Corps, and the headline is Marines build the world's first continuous 3D printed concrete barracks. Now, here's the qualified, not the world's first continuous 3D printed building, but concrete barracks. So literally speaking, they're right. There are other world firsts in this area. So they did this in 40 hours. subtitle, normally it takes 10 Marines 5 days to build a traditional barracks out of wood. So they're talking about building barracks out in combat locations and so forth and so on, right? This comes from a publication that I grew to love and know my 10 years plus with Autodesk in the architecture construction area, and it's called Building Design and Construction Magazine, a story by David Malone, one of their key writers. And let's just jump into the story. If you have the show notes, you got this groovy picture of this really kind of bizarre looking thing, this little barracks. So it goes into the announcement. It says the additive manufacturing team at Marine Corps Systems Command and Marines from Marine Expeditionary Force recently teamed up with the U.S. Army Engineer Research and Development Center to 3D print a barracks. Imagine being in the Marine Corps and this is what you do. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Sign of the times, right? By the way, the Marine Expeditionary Force is a Marine Air Ground Task Force of the United States Marine Corps, primarily composed of the 1st Marine Division, 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, and the 1st Marine Logistics Group. And by the way, they're based in Camp Pendleton, Southern California, and I grew up in San Clemente, California, just on the northern border of that great camp. So it has kind of a personal interest to me as well. The team used a computer-aided design model on a 10-year-old computer. That's curious. Concrete and a 3D printer to create a 500 square foot building. The job took 40 hours, but the Marines claim if there was a robot to do the mixing and pumping, the building could easily be created in 1 day. Typically, it takes 10 Marines 5 days to build a barracks out of wood. And because of the lack of time here, I'll just sort of skim over a few things.
Sure.
I won't go through some of the quotes. We'll scroll down here. Not only does using a concrete printer expedite barracks construction, but it can also keep Marines safe. Now, this is an interesting point. Quote, in active or simulated combat environments, we don't want Marines out there swinging hammers and holding plywood up. Having a concrete printer that can make buildings on demand is a huge advantage for Marines operating downrange. One of the officials was quoted as saying, the Marine Corps is currently staffing a deliberate urgent needs statement and concept of employment for this technology. The results of the field user evaluation will inform future requirements to give the Corps a concrete construction additive manufacturing program of record. And there's a link here to get more information. As with a little bit of time we have remaining, I just think this is such a great example of today's military. Young men and women listening to this, today's military can offer you high-tech, avant-garde training opportunities. If you've got the skills and the inclination and so forth, don't discount the fact that our modern military can give you these kinds of experiences. Here they are doing 3D printing, doing this kind of innovative work, and in this case, in collaboration with the U.S. Army. I just thought it had a lot to say about what's going on with technology and what's going on with technology in our military.
Yeah, and just looking at the pictures, I do not claim to be any kind of military expert. In fact, I'm probably the closest thing to a pacifist that will punch you back. But I will say that looking at this, I do like how they kind of designed it, because if you look at it, it kind of curves in and out. The walls kind of undulate instead of just being flat walls. And as I understand, they do the same thing with tank plating, is that if they're shot, just kind of emphasizing that this would be built in a war zone, when they're shot, the bullet will deflect, or it will, kind of direct some of the force away from simply going through and through the building. Oh, yeah. So interesting point. It's stronger, it's safer, it's faster, all around a better piece of equipment for building a barracks. It's this sounds like a no-brainer. The only thing I question is the fact that instead of having, someone holding up plywood at, kind of as they said, and you do save a human life, I don't know if this equipment, and you might know this better than I do, but construction equipment, and especially something as I don't want to say this is supremely precise, but it's run by a computer. I don't know how durable it is. I mean, if someone shoots it with a rifle, is it going to break? How easy is this to sabotage? And that's something that they have to consider. So. Well,
there's a lot of things to consider. Yeah. When you think about it, you're going to have to get concrete mix and stuff out to a site. Right. You're going to have this robotic dispensing mixing apparatus. You can see in the picture there some of that, all that material, all that physical material going out to the site. Well, wouldn't it make more sense just to prefab like a manufactured home kind of thing and send the panels out to the site and just button it up? I mean, I'm not poo-pooing this story. I think it was interesting mainly for the idea
You
of our
have
military
to,
being
you definitely have to explore it. So, Ralph,
Yeah.
there's music in the background, and that simply means that we are done for today. Like we said, 5 stories down, 5 to go. Everyone, they're in the show notes at computeramerica.com. Ralph, you will join us here next month if all goes as planned. Second Friday of every month. People, mark your calendars. And Ralph, I want to say thank you for coming on, and hope you have a great weekend.
Hey, same to you. Always a blast, and good luck to everybody hit by Florence.
Absolutely, absolutely. So everyone, we'll be back here Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. Monday, again, I think we're confirmed. We're all set to go. Parallels. They let you run Windows and Mac on the same computer. They're a great product. Looking forward to talking to them. And until next time, everyone, have a great day. Bye-bye.